You're listening to Advice from Your Advocates, a show where we provide elder law advice to professionals who work with the elderly and their families.
Welcome to Advice from Your Advocates. I'm Elder Law Attorney Bob Mannor, and I'm here with Savannah Meksto, a certified dementia practitioner. Today, we're going to do a new series on something that so many of you are quietly dealing with. Being stuck in the middle. We call it the sandwich generation. And it can be very difficult when you're taking care of your parents and you're taking care of your kids.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Bob. It's a real challenge raising your own family while also stepping into a caregiving role for your parents. The emotional toll is real, but the legal landmines, that is where I think people get blindsided. Today, we're going to walk through the most common mistakes that families make and also how to protect yourself and your loved ones before a crisis hits.
And, that's a really good point, Savannah, because we really do have to think about this. When we talk about the sandwich generation, the issue is that it's not always obvious. Like, it could be that our parents are getting older. We're not necessarily caring for them, but we know that that's a possibility in the future. And so we're trying to raise our kids. We know our parents are getting older. They need a little bit of help. Sometimes they're asking for, help with making sure that their bills get paid, things like that. But the idea is it really is very important to try to make sure that you have the legal plan in place before a crisis takes hold, especially if there's any indication of dementia or Alzheimer's or anything like that, which so many of us are facing, and it can get to the point where they might not be able to sign legal documents.
So I like how you mentioned that being a sandwich generation caregiver doesn't necessarily mean that your parent is living with you in the home, because I think that's a common misconception. If you might think, oh, well, they're not living with me, I wouldn't consider myself a caregiver, but really you kind of are.
Well, and so one of the things we notice is, when it comes to families, obviously there's small families, there's big families, but, regardless of the size of the family, there's usually one or two kids that step up and are willing to help out. And sometimes it's simply geography. If somebody lives in California, it's going to be really a lot more difficult for them to be day-to-day helpful for their parents. And so sometimes it's geography. Sometimes it's just I don't want to discount the folks that can't provide that daily help, because we've all got kids and dogs and jobs and everything else, and so it can be very difficult. But what we do find is that it's often one or two of the kids that will be really involved, and the other kids just kind of follow along, at least, unless hopefully they follow along.
So, and it's not, necessarily the day-to-day activities of care. It could be making certain decisions, managing the finances, even helping find documents. Bob, why do you think that so many people who are in this stage of life wait until there's actually a crisis before they step in and realize, hey, this is a situation and I'm living in it and I'm kind of stressed? Why do you think that so many people wait until they get to that before they take a next step?
Well, and I think you're raising some really good issues here, because when let's dive a little bit into the legal, part of it, the legal documents. It is so important to have updated legal documents if you're going to be trying to help your parents. And a lot of us kind of think of this for whatever reason. Culturally, we seem to think that, once we went to a lawyer 30 years ago, that should be sufficient. And somewhere there's probably some documents, somewhere there's a will, somewhere there might be a power of attorney, things like that. And the reality is that's a bad thought process. We should not be saying, if mom and dad say, oh, yeah, we did that, 30 years ago, whatever, when you guys, because probably the will says, it's when the kids were 5 years old, and it also says that their aunt is going to be, caring for them. So it's one of those things that does need to be updated. You and I, we talk a lot about this, that there's what I call the lifetime documents, and then there's the, what happens when I die. Most people focus on the what happens when I die, right? And that's actually not what we're talking about here. We really